Hi, awesome members of the Nest. Thank you for joining us tonight. You could be anywhere, but you chose to be here with us. And we're talking tonight with Krystal Marquis, who is the author of The Davenports. How's it going, Krystal?
Oh, it's going great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about the Davenports and see what you all think and answer any questions you might have.
Yay, we're so excited to have
Awesome.
you.
We're excited to hear here.
For those of us who aren't familiar with you and your work, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I grew up in Connecticut. I went to school in Massachusetts and Connecticut, and I had originally wanted to study medicine. And while I was between school and applying for the MCATs, I became an EMT. And I used to read like in between calls and when I dispatched in between calls during downtime. And I got into a terrible writing slump and I couldn't find the book I wanted to read. My younger brother, who is also a writer, he is doing NaNoWriMo. I'd done it with him before, but he challenged me to write a new book during NaNoWriMo with him. It was a dare. And the Davenports is part of that dare. The first partial that I did was during that NaNoWriMo in 2019. And first of all, I learned that I need very detailed outlines and I needed to do a lot more research. But it was a lot of fun. And for anyone who's not familiar with NaNoWriMo, it's a writing challenge to write 50,000 words of a novel during the month of November. November's National Novel Writing Month. So, yeah, I took on that challenge and I started writing this story that I wanted to read and couldn't find. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And I'm really excited that it's out there for other people to read.
That's so fun. We saw that you started writing it maybe on a date.
Oh, no, a dare.
Oh, dare. Oh,
Dare.
so I wonder if that was a typo
No,
in a description.
that would be awkward, though. Hold on. Let me just write this down.
I'll look into that for you.
Wouldn't be the worst date we've ever heard of, but
Because I read that in our questions earlier and I was like, that's really interesting. How, not to jump into the book right away, but how much did the draft like evolve from your original draft?
So, one of the biggest things that changed was Olivia's relationship with her best friend Ruby.
Okay.
In that first early draft, they were frenemies. They were both competing for the bachelor pool and in competition as the two wealthiest girls in their kind of circle of friends and family. So when I wrote that first draft, they were mean girls to each other. And then in revisions and fleshing out the story, it didn't feel natural. So I ended up rewriting those few chapters with them as best friends. And it's one of my favorite relationships in the book. And they really mesh well together. And I love how supportive and caring they are for each other. So that was one of the biggest changes.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see how it could have started out like that, but having their strong relationship is so much better for sure.
Yeah.
So as you're writing, what drew you to the romance genre? Any specific character arcs or tropes?
So I love romance. I think it's fun. I think the love triangle is either you love it or you hate it. And I love it. I think if you're reading the story, there's multiple love triangles in the Davenports, which is pretty funny. Sorry to anyone who doesn't like them, but I had a lot of fun with them. And I think they're really great devices to help characters grow and evolve, especially when they're trying to decide what they want out of life or society or a relationship. Having that love triangle and seeing that different relationship and interactions really help. And it's always something that's fun to explore.
A good love triangle is always a
Yeah.
favorite trope of mine.
And I also really liked, not necessarily between Olivia and her love interest, they're not really rivals or enemies to lovers, but I like that little bit of animosity and witty banter back and forth before people like, hey, I think I like you. Like, this is weird.
Just that little sprinkle of snark.
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, just like Olivia and Washington's personality is not necessarily meshing well together at first, and him kind of being a little teasing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of jumping around for a second, you mentioned Jurassic Park in your bio, so we have to talk about Jurassic Park. If you were to create your own Jurassic Park, which dinosaur would be the highlight? And let's be honest, most likely to cause mayhem.
I mean, I loved Velociraptors from like the first movie,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the latest trilogy with Blue just like cemented the fact that they're so smart and like agile, and I just think they're so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of always thought it would be really cool if there were dinosaurs or just even the science behind it. Like I'm a huge biology nerd, and me looking at a story that took something that I was learning about in school and making this kind of like plausible science idea out of it, I thought that was like amazing. And it was a lot of fun trying to imagine like all the science and the research and the development that would have gone into that. And like the geek in me was like, this is amazing. This is such a great story. So yeah, I definitely would be on that island trying to develop these creatures if that was a real possibility.
I mean, I love how right from the beginning they like made it look so easy of how they created the
Oh
dinosaurs.
yeah.
Like, just took this amber and
Just like plug and play. It's like easy. Who cares?
No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal.
I'm glad you said Blue because I don't know, some of the like crazy like mashup gene ones in the latest movies are a little bit too much for me.
Oh yeah. I feel like that is too much. I feel like I would be on the side of the let's try and be as scientifically accurate as we can.
The purist.
Yes.
With dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So were you one of those little kids that knew all of the dinosaur names?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I think I had like this
strong
like,
dinosaur phase.
Yeah, one of those thick books, coffee table books with all the different dinosaurs and like all the names and like where you'd find them on the planet and where their bones were discovered. And like I had one of those big things that I probably memorized it at the time. So
those eyewitness books, if you remember those. Oh, those were my jam. I had the dinosaur one and a bunch of the others. And, those were the best books.
I actually, about a month ago, I was in Colorado, and over kind of by the Red Rocks Amphitheater, they have this, what they call like a dinosaur walk. That's like a trail that has different fossils and dinosaur tracks, and it's really cool, and I highly recommend it.
That one was really cool. I went with my grandparents when I was younger. That was really a cool, worth the trip for a dino nerd. It brought back the like 5-year-old self.
Nice.
And all those names that like I didn't know I remembered still, but they're still rattling around there somewhere. So speaking of Jurassic Park, would you ever want to write a story set in that universe?
Ooh, yes.
I would read it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just throwing it out there. You have readers.
Even a quick little fanfic.
Yes, definitely.
Do you think besides that, is romance the genre that you would want to keep writing, or do you have other genres that you'd want to try?
So I have like from previous NaNoWriMos, I have like partial manuscripts and like ones that I've been playing around with, and those are all sci-fi.
Oh,
yeah. So like the Davenports was my first like little foray into historical fiction. I always read historical fiction. Like I love one of my favorite authors is Elizabeth Peters and her Amelia Peabody series about a parasol wielding female archaeologist in the 1800s is like one of my favorite stories. But yeah, like all the things I'd written before were all science fiction. So I think it would be something I would definitely like to explore.
That would be fun too.
Yeah, so well, let's start with one thing. So the Davenports came out at the end of January. Did you do anything fun to celebrate the release?
Yes. So my mom and I went to brunch, and that was a lot of fun. And then I had this wonderful event at Barnes and Noble in Manchester, and I had a lot of friends and family, a few coworkers come by, and just local book lovers. So it was a lot of fun to have that. I did a reading from the Davenports, and I did some signing and some pictures. It was very much like, hey, you're like an actual author now kind of moment. It was very surreal and like really wonderful. And then afterwards, I went out to dinner with my family, which was really nice. I have a pretty big family. I'm the oldest of four siblings, so we all got together with my nephew and my parents, and it was really nice.
That sounds
fun.
really fun.
Mhm.
And yeah, that seeing it in a Barnes Noble has got to be the like you made it moment.
Yes, it's like this for yeah.
Which part of the book did you read from?
So I read one of Olivia's chapters, chapter 12, which was part of the scene was her and her mother. Her mother's super excited that they found a possible match for her, but she's thinking about what she wants in life, and there's a little bit of, confusion on her part, and then her remembering the impact that her family has as being one of the few wealthy Black families in Chicago at that time, and what it really means to have money and influence in a society that was about to change for people like her.
Yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about the plot and what inspired the Davenports?
Yeah, of course. So the Davenport is about four young Black women. There's the two Davenport daughters, Helen and Olivia. Olivia is the oldest, always doing what is expected of her, and she's looking for a husband. Her younger sister, Helen, wants none of that. She would rather be out in the garage with her brother, tinkering on carriages or the Model T that he brought home. There's also Ruby, Olivia's best friend, who's also looking for a love match. And then Amy Rose, who is a maid in the Davenport household, who has a crush on John Davenport, but is also harboring this secret desire to open a hair salon and have her own hair care line. And it's about these four young girls trying to navigate that transition into adulthood, where they have to balance what they want and what society expects of them, and the limitations of being Black and female in the early 1900s. My inspiration came from an article that I'd read about C.R. Patterson and his company. He was a man that had escaped slavery and moved up north and became blacksmith, later opening a carriage company that his son later converted to an automobile company. And the article had said that it was the first and only Black owned automobile company in America. And I thought that was amazing. I had never heard about it, I didn't learn about it in school. So I was very surprised to learn about this part of history that, seemed to be forgotten. And then as I was doing more research, trying to figure out more about this company, I saw another article that mentioned that Patterson had three daughters. Their names are Dorothea, Mary, and Kate. And there was very little information about them. So I was kind of perplexed. Like, what was their life like? What did they do? What parties did they go to? So that started a whole other search. And it's clothes and shopping and shoes and carriages and just what society would have been to be Black and be wealthy, but then also kind of have some restrictions based on race and gender at that time. So like that was my starting off point when I began writing the Davenports, was to explore what their lives would have been like.
There are so many of those unique figures that you just don't end up hearing about. I
Yeah.
like the picture was Madam C.J. Walker. That's when I was reading about them too. That was who kept popping into my mind.
Yeah. So like she was actually the inspiration for Amy Rose. So Amy Rose is based on her character and the fact that she started doing hair care out of her kitchen and then selling what she was making and then opening her own business and becoming a millionaire from that. So it is one of those things that was not really taught in school, at least like
Mhm.
where I went, and I didn't know many people who knew about these stories. So it was really fun and interesting to explore those further.
It's a really I like the historical fictions that are the teaching fictions without
Mhm.
actually feeling like a textbook, but
Yeah.
it really seems to prompt wanting to research more or learn more about it, find the real nonfiction version. Are
Mhm.
there any kind of nonfiction authors or books that you read related to that you particularly enjoyed, or resources?
So I really like The Great Migration by Isabel Wilkerson. I'm rereading it now as I'm writing the follow-up to the Davenports. And there's just so much
Ooh.
information in that book that I really found useful. And then
Mhm.
there are a few books that I took out from my local library, which I have in, I have a note with like all my research in it. But I have a bunch of books there too about different milestones, different years. The fact that there were mayors in other states that were elected
Mhm.
and people who served in Congress and just all these different entrepreneurs. So I have like this little like notebook with like all my information in it. And I thought that it was just so interesting that these were people who made such trailblazing strides that we did not learn about and that
Mhm.
I didn't know about. So yeah, it was a lot of research, but also a lot of fun, and I liked incorporating the different things that I found into the story.
Yeah, I was just looking at one of the um Ruby's dad is running for mayor of Chicago.
Mhm.
So, of course, right now I'm Googling like first black mayor of Chicago,
Yeah.
which obviously, like, I didn't know who that was.
Mhm.
Because of course, a million things are coming up right now.
Yeah.
So I know Harold Washington was not the first,
Mhm.
or was he? Yeah. And then another interesting piece of the book that I didn't know about was the race riots in Springfield as well that you added in there.
Mhm.
Um, just something else to look into if anyone wants a deep dive of early 1900s history.
Mhm. Yeah, that was definitely something that was, I think, when I was drafting, it was the anniversary of the one that happened in Tulsa, and I
Mhm.
think learning about how that Black Wall Street was impacted brought up. I'm like, well, it only didn't happen here, and it wasn't the only Black Wall Street during this time.
Mhm.
So it was very interesting to see that across the country that there were all these little pockets of
Mhm.
Black success that I did not know about before that I was, very interested in learning more about.
Yeah, like, I had only heard about the Oklahoma one, I mean, honestly, maybe, like, in the past 10 years, so not even within any of my schooling, which is just
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it took me getting to some of the AP American history classes that
Okay.
went deeper into that,
Mhm.
and we ended up having that year's focus, just by chance when I went through, was racial tension through American history. That just happened to be the topic, so we went farther into it. But otherwise, if you hadn't taken specific classes to look for it, it would have been completely missed.
Yeah, I think I didn't end up taking one until I went to university, and that
Mhm.
was very surprising. Yeah.
Well, how about let's dive in a little bit. So, the Davenports is told through the point of view of 4 different women. What made you wanna go in that direction for telling your story?
I like multiple point of view stories. And for me, the different characters, they were going on such different journeys. And I wanted to take the readers along with that, especially Olivia's character, her discovery of what was going on down south, I think was an aha moment. It was something that she was very distanced from because of her
Mhm.
sheltered life. And I thought it'd be fun and interesting to bring readers along with her. And then with the other characters, Ruby, I think Ruby's funny and impulsive, and I think that was also something that I enjoyed writing, and I hope that readers would really connect with being in her head when she's making all these decisions that really just make her whole life harder. Um, but then also makes the end that more satisfying. And I just had so much that I wanted to say and different worlds that I wanted to explore. For Amy Rose, she has that like upstairs downstairs relationship
Mhm.
with the rest of the girls. So she has a little bit more freedom, like she can go into town unaccompanied. She's working with the other women in the household and hearing the gossip, and she just has like a different type of freedom and leeway than the girls. Like she doesn't have the money they have to go everywhere, but I think her position allows her a little bit more freedom socially. So
Mhm.
that was really interesting to show as well.
Well, and then my heart just like felt for Helen, just wanting to do what she loves, working on cars and working on carriages, and
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, one of the major themes in the book was love and being in love with someone that maybe you're not supposed to be in love with.
Mhm.
Why was this important for you to include, or how did this kind of come about?
I think for me, like the Davenports was the type of book that I wanted to read, and I really do enjoy that. That's probably another trope that I like is the forbidden love trope. And I think especially first love, you're trying to explore yourself, explore who you want to be, and then you're meeting all these new people, there's all these new feelings. So I think finding that person who's different to you and brings a different type of excitement and interest and curiosity was very interesting to write, and I hope to read.
Mhm.
I thought it was really fun, and I don't know, it's just like, yeah, it's just really fun.
Well, and even going into the love triangles, I mean, how like multiple love triangles are like interconnected, and
Mhm.
um, I thought that was fun, but also scandalous, you know.
Yeah.
um, we also have a question from one of our viewers. Zoe wanted to know if the Davenports took any influence from Little Women.
I'm not sure that it did. It's definitely one of my favorites, so maybe subconsciously I was influenced. Definitely, like, the 4 girls and being close and just really strong female relationships. I went to, like, all-girls high school, and I think I was asked, "Why do all the girls get along? Like, nobody's catty." And I'm like, "Girls don't have to be catty. Like, girls can just get along and be friends." And I think that thought of sisterhood and community was really important to me to write about. And Little Women, the Jane Austen novels, Jane Eyre, like
Those
those
are
are
just
some of my favorite
cornerstones.
books. Yeah. So it's this was really something that I enjoyed writing, drawn from books that I enjoyed reading.
I will say, I think the classes that I've taken that have been all women
Mhm.
or all girls in high school, those were some of the tightest classes.
Yeah.
And like the interactions between everyone ended up being some of the best discussions, the best
Mhm.
learning
Mhm.
environments that I was in. Nothing wrong with the mixed classes or the boys, but those were the standouts to me of everybody's participation and involvement.
Yeah.
So
One,
jumping,
oh, I'm going to jump in, sorry, with one
yeah.
question from Kristen, just since we were kind of on the topic. Was it hard for you to keep track of multiple point of views, or did you have like spreadsheets going of what each character is doing, or?
So I had a very detailed outline. I redid the outline a few times, but each time I made a major plot point, I made sure that I went in and updated the outline or, wrote a note somewhere so that I would remember. But I have this very elaborate OneNote on my computer with different tabs, and it's sorted out by character, different scenes, uh, I see. I think Chicago is its own tab with different places and restaurants and food that was popular, hair trends, fashion trends. It's very, very, like I said, I was a science geek, so I'm used to taking notes. I'm used to organizing index cards and flashes and tabs. I have all of them. So that was basically what I used, and they're very detailed. And even now, I find myself referring back to them, and it's so funny. Someone was reading, it's like, wait, didn't you say this person smelled like pine and that person smelled like bergamot? And I was like, oh man, I switched it. So I had to make sure that I had to go back in and update that one note so that I can keep track. Like this person smells like this. Yeah, it's a lot of notes, but it's fun.
OneNote is
Notes are
awesome.
fun.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, sorry, Lydia, you can go ahead now.
Oh, no. So the book taking place in Chicago in 1910. You mentioned this briefly earlier, but Olivia started learning more about the Jim Crow laws in the South and goes to her first rally. Can you tell us more about what drew you to using this time period?
So this time period in particular, I felt like there weren't a lot of stories written about it. A lot of it was born out of my own curiosity. And I love flappers. Everyone loves flappers, but I felt like there was a lot of stories about flappers and not so
Yeah.
many about the time period just before that. And
That Belle Epoque Edwardian era always gets kind of
yes,
overshadowed by the
So
Victorians
flashy.
and the 1920s.
yeah, it's like, what happened? What happened? It's like a lost decade.
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting. And as you mentioned, like Helen just wants to work on cars and like they're this new invention. And I'm someone who tinkers with cars with my dad. Like I have a '06 Mustang that we like fix up. And to think that that's when cars were really starting to gain popularity and starting to replace carriages. And it was kind of the end of one era and the beginning of another one. And still there weren't that many stories during that time. And I'm like, so many things are going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, I was pretty much drawn to this like cloak of, I don't know, silence that was around this time. I just wanted to dive deeper into that time period, especially since there was so much change going on.
Such a rapid expansion of technology, social
Yeah.
standings.
I would giggle every time you said horseless carriage. Because I'm like, yeah, I guess that's what it is. That's what a car is.
It was like fun finding all the slang like in different books. Like, oh, this is interesting. People used to say that. That's funny. But yeah, horseless carriage is like one
What's
of my
some other
favorites.
slang that you found?
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was like, did I cut out? Someone cut out. Can you tell us some other slang that you found?
Oh, let me see. I feel like there was an interesting one that was. Let me see if I remember what it was. It was. I'm like totally blanking now. I think I had one of the ladies that worked in the house say it, but I don't
Yeah, I feel like I
remember.
can remember from reading it, and now I don't remember either.
One of my favorites from that era has got to be I've got the morbs, as in morbid, of like when you're just feeling like icky and apathetic.
I'll be using that
Really
from
funny.
now on.
Yeah, got the morbs.
I like that one. I like the morbs.
Well, we kind of dug into this a little bit, but I'd like to hear more about it. So there's a lot of exploration about what a woman's place role is, especially as Black women of the time. Can you tell us a little bit more about either what you researched or how you brought it to life in the book?
So one of the things that I found pretty interesting was that during this time, women still had, especially wealthier women, they still had this notion that they needed to have chaperones and go out in groups, and there was a lot of formality to dating still.
Mhm.
But then there was also this accepted um, kind of behavior of the working class women where they're independent, they're making their own money, they're working in factories, and they're also joining the suffrage movement. So like they're calling for the vote, and then there's like this whole other group of women who are still holding on to past values, their parents' values. And then for women of higher Black society, they were kind of trying to mold into society as a whole and adopting a lot of what they're seeing their white counterparts do. So it was a mix of like class and also like economic status trying to
Mhm.
influence how these women behaved. And it's just interesting that the women of the high society were still trying to hold on to these past practices. And it's the working class women who are making that push to like, hey, no, we want to vote. We're heading these households. We're making our own money. So we deserve to make more decisions. And it was just very interesting to see how some rules applied to some women and others didn't.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah.
So on that vein, it's
Mhm.
the courting practices of the era are so interesting. They how much they reflect still that Regency era England or
Mhm.
Victorian era. Do you think this was more about the historical time period or the high society and the particularly among Black women of trying to imitate this societal expectation of that white women had had previously?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it was trying to claim part of this, like, society and this class that was excluded to them
Mhm.
even just one generation before. And it's kind of trying to establish, like, "Hey, we belong in these spaces. We belong in these conversations," and just asserting that they are important and that they matter and that they deserve the same type of respect.
Mhm. It seems, at least, so my heritage on Swedish, it seems similar to like in the Minneapolis area, Swedish immigrants.
Mhm,
Some of the most gorgeous and over the top mansions in our city were built by Swedish immigrants or other immigrant groups as like proof that look, we can do it too, and we can do it
mhm.
better than you can, as almost a kind of a status symbol to try to get that hierarchy or proof that they could accomplish it too. It seems like that kind of trickles into that dating or courting culture.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then I just kept going back to the ideas of like the match that's good for Olivia, and then more of the love match, and then also with Ruby and her family not having as much money as they used to, so she really and she's an only child, so she really needs to marry that rich man, but
Mhm.
is that who she wants to be with? um just some of that tension is always so interesting.
Yeah.
um well, so one of the comparisons of this book is that it's kind of Bridgerton meets Downton Abbey. Um, and I've been seeing a lot of stuff about that. It's like a black version of Bridgerton. Like, how do you feel about those comparisons?
I feel it's, like, a little overwhelming because they are so big and so popular.
Mhm.
I think for I've read the first few Bridgerton novels, and I've watched the series, love them both. And I think that one of the things that make my book stand apart from that is the fact that it is based on a family that existed, and
Mhm.
it's influenced by society as it used to be, whereas the I think Bridgerton had colorblind casting, which is very forward-thinking and innovative, and I think really helped open the doors to more storytelling of Black stories and mixed stories. And it has, like, that big grand opulence, which was something that I definitely had a lot of fun writing and researching about. And I think for Downton Abbey too, it's very much like this bigger than what I would expect kind of comparison. So it's very humbling and, like, very exciting to, like, hear about that, but I'm also really excited that in being in conversations with those 2, that it's bringing a spotlight onto the history that helped inspire it.
Particularly, I think with Bridgerton, of your book seems to take what they started and just bring a little more historic accuracy and shine a little bit better light on a group that's so often overlooked.
Yeah.
Ashley's laughing at
I'm
me.
laughing because I know Lydia has issues with Bridgerton.
Look, it's aesthetically lovely.
Yes.
But I prefer the ones that are deeply rooted in history.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you hinted at it a little bit before, but do you think we will see more of these characters?
Yes. Yes. So I'm currently working on book 2. It's a lot a lot of new issues that they have to deal with, but it's really exciting. It takes place a couple of weeks after book 1 ends. So it's still a lot of the girls made decisions at the end of book 1 that they kind of have to deal with the consequences of. But then they also have a lot of new opportunities to kind of showcase what they've learned so far and pursue their passions that I'm really excited about. So I'm really looking forward to people getting to see that as well.
Yes. Do you have plans for this currently to be like a duology or maybe more of a series, or you're kind of just seeing where it takes you?
I can see it being more than a duology, but I like to leave it out there in the open. As it's outlined right now, there's potential for more. So I'm excited.
Awesome.
We will take it all, as many as you want to write. What do you hope that readers take away from the Davenports?
So one of the biggest things I hope they take away is that choosing how you want to live your life and who you want to be, your character, your future, your passion, as difficult as that may be, it's definitely a brave thing to do. And to not be afraid to tell your own story or to create. This book was something that I wanted to read, and I'm so excited that I get to share it with other people. And I think not putting yourself in a box and being able to explore and try new things is very empowering. And I just really encourage people to share their story in any medium they feel comfortable doing. Yeah.
I love it. Lydia, go with anything you want to go with.
So the cover of this one is just super eye-catching.
Oh,
How
yes.
much input did you have? Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Especially that gold is beautiful.
Yes.
How much input did you have in the design process?
So I got to give some feedback on the cover when I was presented the cover. It was already so beautiful, and I really enjoyed being able to help pick the tagline and the font and like the way the girls were situated. And the arcs that I got, they were bright, bright yellow and super fun and flirty. And then when I got this with the gold and how shiny it is, it's just so gorgeous and so exciting.
It is such a cover by book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It came in the mail and I was like, ah!
Yeah, I love it. They did such a wonderful job.
It's beautiful.
Well, one question we always like to ask is, can readers get signed copies of the book anywhere?
So they can order signed copies from Riverbend Bookshop. It's based out in Connecticut. And I think I'll be doing some signing giveaways soon. So if anyone follows me on social media, I will post that in the coming weeks. And I'm not sure if I have anything local scheduled yet, but I'm very much up to it. So yeah. If anyone's in this Seattle area or in, I think, Irving, Texas, for the North Texas Book Festival, I'll also be there signing. So if anyone's in that area, yeah.
Awesome.
But
So especially with your experience with NaNoWriMo,
Mhm.
do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
So I would say to keep at it. It's very easy to get discouraged, and writing is kind of a lonely experience. You do a lot of it by yourself. So if you find a group, even through NaNoWriMo, like our groups were virtual. I wrote with my brother. Just find a group that you can get support from, get on a schedule. It doesn't have to be every day. Like NaNoWriMo is there to kind of encourage you to write every day. That's the way that it's kind of like designed. But I would say just trying to keep up with it and not give up, keep going. Like your story, no matter how many people read it, is important. And I think that it's a very self satisfying feeling to know that you are creating this world and these characters from your own imagination, and that it's a very creative and rewarding process to like not get discouraged.
So
That's good advice. What would a perfect writing day look like for you?
Ooh.
Either the space, the setting, whatever.
So space would be neat and organized. That would be perfect. That's usually not the case. Uh, but yeah, that would be best for me. For when I was drafting the Davenports, I was working a weird split shift. So I was getting home at 10 at night, and I would like grab something quick to eat and then change and like write for a couple hours and then sleep in the morning. Um, so it's very, very odd. People are like, "Wait, when do you start writing?" I'm like, around midnight, and then I write until like 3 or 4, and they're like, "What's wrong with you?" But yeah, is I would say what helped me the most was knowing that I had a specific time to write each day, and then I would take Thursdays off. I would like watch Grey's Anatomy or something and relax and veg out on a Thursday and then like write the rest of the weekend. But yeah, a perfect writing day would be getting those like 3 solid hours in a space that's like neat and clean with a snack, Swedish fish or Sour Patch Kids, and some coffee or, Earl Grey, depending on my mood, how tired I am. And yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yes.
Sour Patch Kids are always the way to go.
Oh yeah.
The watermelon Sour Patch, those are my favorite.
Mine too. I tried the strawberry ones recently. They're really good.
That was one of my go-to like pregnancy cravings too. I ate way too many of those.
Mhm.
So this is the first book that you've published, but
Mhm.
is it the first book that you've written? I know sometimes things get shelved, or do you have anything that you would like to come back to?
I have a few that are shelved. I think I have, I want to say three that are like, there's a the end on the last page. Don't know how good they are, but some, stage of the editing process that are shelved right now that I think there's one in particular that I would really want to go back to. Um, but yeah, they're pretty exciting. But I'm happy in the Davenport world right now. So, but yeah.
I just had a question that just flew out of my head. What was it? So what I know for a lot of writers, myself included, is kind of like a love-hate relationship with like editing.
Mm.
Do you, especially from when you had drafted and then continued to work on the Davenports, was there a lot of like editing that you needed to do? Were there any parts that you had maybe wanted to keep in the book, but you had to take out, unfortunately?
I don't think there were many standout parts that I had to take out, but I'm definitely someone who prefers editing to drafting. Like, I just wish all of the ideas and dialogue and scenery in my head would just appear on the page, and I'll be super happy to go back in and like cut and trim and like all the other stuff. Like, I'd rather edit all day. It's getting it like actually in the Word document, even though I know exactly how I want the scene to look. I kind of like edit in my head before I even type it. So then I just sit there and stare at the screen.
That's
But yeah, I think I think once it's drafted, editing is so much easier, and I have a lot of fun editing. I know it's like you said, it's a love-hate relationship. I definitely love editing. Drafting, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it just, whether it's my ADHD, whatever, but like just getting it on the page is definitely like the hard part for me. Whereas going back and kind of polishing it up and being like, sometimes having that time to go back to a scene and be like, wait, actually, I'm going to switch this right here. And then now it's perfect. Or,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it was maybe on some Instagram posts from authors. They were like, I'm editing my new book and I hate editing. And I was just like, all right.
So have there been any books that you've been reading lately or are particularly looking forward to as new releases?
Oh, yeah. So I'm currently reading House of Hollow, which is very like dark and creepy, and I really like it. It's also about sisters, so I like books about sisters. They're always like fun relationships, and they're always like interesting. And I think if you know, you know. And um, I'm really looking forward to Queen Bee by Emily Howard. I got to read an advanced copy of that, and I'm like really excited for people to read that one. It's kind of like Monte Cristo, and it's kind of a revenge story, but it's also like an anti-Regency. So if you like Regency and Bridgerton, that is a really good book to read. So I'm really excited for that. And I feel like there's a long list of books that I am really excited for. But yeah, it's a finding the
When you
time.
find a good new release, you find like 6 more.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially when you are planning to go to the bookstore for one thing, like and never leave with just the one thing.
No, you never leave with only the book you came for.
Oh no, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go pick up my pre-order and then take these 4 others that I saw on the way to the register.
Exactly.
Yeah.
what are some of your favorite romances? Since I know you are a big romance reader,
Oh, so
like all-time favorite.
all-time favorites. Let's see. I want to say like the Amelia Peabody series by Elizabeth Peters is one of my favorites. It's about a young woman who inherits a lot of money from her archaeologist father. And because it's like 1876 and she's a woman, she's not technically allowed to be one, but she gets his inheritance and she's like, I'm going to Egypt. And she goes and she falls in love with someone there. And it's a lot of history and romance, but like also kind of forward thinking. She kind of reminds me of Olivia and Helen. I really like some of the books that my mom has read. Like when I got old enough, I would read Joanna Lindsay or Lisa Kleypas. I like Jasmine Gilroy. I like her books too. They're like feel good, happy, like contemporary novels. And I don't know. I feel like I read like across a spectrum, so it's a lot of fun. I also really like Jenny Han and Nicola Yoon for like YA. Like their books always make me feel happy after I read them, and they're a lot of fun romances. Yeah.
You need those cozy palate cleansers sometimes too.
Have you read Drunk on Love by Jasmine Guillory?
I haven't read that one yet.
Oh my God, it's so good. I just read it.
Nice. No,
It's also feel good. And if you like wine, it takes place in wine country.
Oh, nice. Like.
Yeah. Okay, 2 questions that are both kind of goofy. One, a lot of the viewers would like to know who your lip color is by and what shade it is.
It is Sephora, and it's Aries, which is like my astrology sign. I don't really follow like astrology, but I really liked this color. So yeah, I usually wear this one or MAC Ruby Woo. So yeah.
And the other question is, what do you think about the mammoth cloning?
I feel like it's pre-Jurassic Park, like that slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like here for it, but then also like, are we making a good decision here?
I love the tweets about that of like, we have an entire movie franchise to tell us why this is a terrible, terrible idea.
Mm-hmm. But like the scientist in me is like,
do it.
But will it work?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even just the whole last Jurassic Park movie about what happens when all the dinosaurs were let loose in the world. Like,
it's like,
learn
it's okay,
these lessons, people. All right, Lydia, do you have any other questions you would like to ask?
Not, but thank you.
All right. Well, Krystal, thank you so much for joining us. We will be watching for the next book, and we would love to have you back to chat about it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun. This was great.
I'm glad we were your first book club to chat with.
Yeah, me too.
And thank you, Words and Whimsy and members of the Nest, for being here. Our next author chat is going to happen actually on Friday, February 17th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And it will be with Lexi Elliott, who's the author of Bright and Deadly Things.
Ooh, nice.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.